commission appointed by the mayor and city council to plan for the orderly growth and development of the community, and to hold public hearings and to make recommendations to the city council on planning items. Please note that the city council rules state that the public hearings for planning cases shall be conducted solely by the planning commission. No additional public hearings will be conducted by the city council. Tonight's cases are tentatively scheduled to be heard by the city council next month. .org. For cases that require public hearings, the procedure will be as follows. First, the planning department staff will summarize the case. Next, we will hear from the applicant or the representative. Then we will receive public testimony. Public comments should be addressed solely to the chair and are limited to 4 minutes. Chris, please take the roll.
Okay, Mr. Dean.
Here.
Mr. Freed is not present this evening. Ms. Herron.
Here.
Mr. Kanar.
Here.
Mr. Kelp.
Here.
Ms. Messina.
Here.
Ms. Pearson.
Here.
Mr. Tababin.
Here.
Mr. Werner is absent, but we do have 7 per quorum.
Thank you. Mr. Feander, did you want to, first up on the agenda is the approval of minutes for December 20, 2021. And I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So I'd make a motion to approve the minutes. This is Commissioner Kanar.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Chris, would you take the roll call, the vote, please?
Hey, Mr. Dean.
Abstain.
Ms. Herron.
Yes.
Mr. Kanar.
Aye.
Mr. Kelp.
Aye.
Ms. Messina.
Aye.
Ms. Pearson.
Yes.
And Mr. Tababin.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0 with 1 abstaining.
Thank you, Chris. Next on the agenda is the election of the 2022 chair and vice chair.
Mr. Vice Chair, I'll step on up and try and help everybody through this. This is our annual election of officers. For those of you keeping count, Mr. Freed had been stepped into the role of chairman at last fall after Mr. Armstrong termed out. Mr. Dean is vice chair and acting in chair capacity tonight. So with those housekeeping matters out of the way, how we would do this is just we'll take a nomination from any of the commissioners for chair, and then we'll take a roll call vote and we'll close the nominations and take a roll call vote. So do I have any nominations for chair for 2022?
Mr. Chairman? Sure. Bill?
Yes. Yes.
Is there any, Mark, is there any prohibition against having a second term or continuation?
Commissioner Kaup, good question. I did not explain. So there is none. In fact, you could even say that Commissioner Freed got shortchanged because he was just elected to fill Mr. Armstrong's post a couple months ago. So
yeah, I'm sure he's pretty bitter about that.
He is, yes, extremely. In fact, I don't know, maybe that's why he's not here, but no, and speaking to him, he absolutely would welcome staying on for.
Well, I would like to nominate him for the 2022 chair.
Okay. So we have Mr. Freed.
Second. Corey Dean was second.
The second, Mr. Dean. Do we have any other nominees for chair? Going once, going twice, going three times. Okay, so nominee Commissioner Freed for Chair 2022. Chris, can you please take the roll?
Mr. Dean,
Aye.
Ms. Herron,
Aye.
Mr. Canar,
Aye.
Mr. Kelp,
Aye.
Ms. Messina,
Aye.
Ms. Pearson,
Aye.
and Mr. Tobabin.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Great. So Mr. Freed,
Followed by pound.
yes, Mr. Freed will stay on as chair then, and we'll be back next month, we hope. All right, so for vice chair, do we have any nominees? Again, Commissioner Dean is filling that role, and he too might feel shortchanged, having come on in the last few months with Mr. Freed.
Followed by
But-
pound. Otherwise, just
All right, let's try that. Any nominees for vice chair 2022?
I would nominate Mr. Dean as vice chair.
Okay,
I second.
and second,
I didn't catch you seconded, please.
was that Ariane?
Demetria Aaron.
Miss Aaron.
Oh, that's Aaron. All right, any other nominees for vice chair? Going once, going twice. Sold. Okay. We will be voting then on Mr. Dean as vice chair for 2022. Chris, please take the roll.
Okay, this time we'll go from the bottom up. Mr. Tobabin,
Aye.
Ms. Pearson.
Aye.
Ms. Messina,
Aye.
Mr. Kelp,
Aye.
Mr. Canar,
Aye.
Ms. Herron,
Aye.
and Mr. Dean.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
And before so great. So we have a chair, Commissioner Freed, and vice chair, Commissioner Dean, and Commissioner Dean's filling in tonight. So nothing changed there. I do want to let folks know Commissioner Freed has notified me that he would be the commission representative on the MTPO policy board with Commissioner Tobabin as a backup for right now. So he intends to fill that until further notice. So just so everyone's informed. So with that, I will pass the gavel back over to Commissioner Dean. And looks like you are not getting shortchanged here in these first couple months.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You bet.
All right. Next up on the list is the declaration of conflict of interest, ex parte communications by members of the commission or staff. Do we have anybody who has any issues? Okay. Not seeing any, we'll go on to action items. Excuse me. Public hearing of PUD 06/01D by College Hills Apartments LLC, requesting to amend the planned unit development master plan to allow operation of a dog park for additional 3 years for use by residents of College Hill Apartments on approximately 0.5 acres, property located on southeast corner of Southwest Lane Street and Southwest 14th Street. Starting out with the presentation by staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to be presenting this tonight. This half-acre parcel at 1423 Southwest Lane Street is a part of the original College Hill apartments and townhomes redevelopment project. this parcel on the original master plan, it included townhomes, and those townhomes were never built. About 3 years ago, the owner, the entity that took over ownership of the College Hill Apartments, approached us and asked us to consider amending the PUD master plan to allow this as a dog park exclusively for the use of the residents and their guests. And at that time, we went through a process to amend the master plan. It was approved for a period of 3 years as an interim use as a dog park. And there's a condition on the approved master plan that at the time it expires, if they want to continue use, they can request an amendment to the PUD master plan, and it has to be processed as a major amendment. And so that's why we're here tonight. They've made that request. Staff is recommending approval subject to conditions. A couple of things I want to point out is the applicant did conduct a neighborhood information meeting using Zoom. Notices were sent to every property owner within 300 feet of the property, and no one attended that meeting. I didn't receive a call or an email. I don't believe the applicant did. So we know of no opposition or other comments from the public about this particular request. Next slide, please. This is just the zoning map and shows you what the zoning looks like around it. The zoning to the north and to the north is a zone for duplexes, residential. To the east, zone for single family. To the south, there's a restaurant on the adjoining parcel, and it's zone C4 commercial. Next slide, please. These are just some photos to give you an idea of what it looks like. The photo on the left is a view on the north side of the park at the entrance. And then the second one is from the west. And these were taken recently. Next slide, please. So staff is requesting approval, as I mentioned. And with a revision to general note number 8 on the master plan, that would allow continued interim use as a dog park, valid for a period of 3 years from the time of recording or until April 30, 2025, essentially the spring of 2025. At the end of 3 years, the owner may request amendment to the PUD master plan, and that amendment can be approved by minor amendment by the planning and development director upon finding that the dog park is operating in substantial compliance with the PUD master plan. And I think that concludes my comments. Be happy to answer any questions or take any comments you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Do we have any questions for staff?
I have a question. Commissioner Pearson?
Yes, Ms. Pearson.
Do they have they indicated any plans to develop that corner?
They are not interested in developing anytime soon. I don't really know why, but they are not interested in doing that right now. So.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Any other questions for staff?
I wasn't quite finished. According to the staff report, it said something about they didn't think it was a suitable housing market.
That is what they're stating. I don't know if that's, I don't know how true that is factually. The housing market is probably as good as it's been in a while. So I think you observed something I did too.
So I guess my concern is just them not having to come before the commission again in 3 years to have this evaluated or analyzed in any way that it could be signed off pretty easily. I mean, it's a great housing market right now. or yeah, there was a multifamily development, probably within a half a mile of here, that was built and filled within 6 months time period. So what kind of market are they looking for? Is a property owner here tonight?
I believe the representative of the owner is here tonight. Chris can probably tell me if he's here. He might be I think the phone number, one identified with a phone number, is with a 405 area code. I believe that's a representative of the applicant.
He may be trying to unmute.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, I was trying to unmute.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, if I could ask Mr. Hall a question.
Please.
Mike, under the PUD, is there any, if the applicant decides to build houses on it next month, do they have to come back before the city, or is that another amendment, or have to remove this amendment in order to do what the PUD originally allowed them to do?
I'm Commissioner Kaup. I'm looking at the PUD master plan. I think I know the answer, but I want to make sure I give you an accurate answer. Yeah, the PD master plan was approved in a way that does not require them to amend it if they come back and do the previous development that was approved.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, my connection timed out for a little bit. Are there any other questions for staff? If not, we can move on to the applicant presentation. Are there any, is there any, I think I heard someone on there, an applicant representative on the line?
Yes, this is Jason Rogers. I am the representative for the applicant.
Okay. Do you have
And
anything
I have
you want to?
no presentation outside of what Mr. Hall had offered.
Okay. Are there any questions for the applicant?
I'll repeat my question that I presented to staff is, what are the future plans for this corner? Are there any in the work?
There are not any in the works at present. Our housing expansion operations have been focused elsewhere in the area, purchasing existing housing units rather than new construction.
Is there any anticipated timeline as to when this corner might be developed again?
None that has been made known to me.
Thank you.
No problem. Do we have any other questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I have one question. This is Commissioner Tobabin. Just curious about how much use the dog park gets.
I'm told that it gets fairly robust use. The residents there like it, and I enjoy being out there with the dogs.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for the applicant? Not seeing any. We'll move on with public testimony. This is 4 minutes per person. Are there anybody in the public out there who would like to speak on this issue? Don't know if I see any open. Okay. If not, we will close the public hearing portion and move on to discussion by commissioners. Is there any discussion regarding this application?
Again, I think I'm just concerned that this is Commissioner Pearson. Again, I'm just concerned that this has already happened, that they've been approved once and made no efforts to develop the property beyond a dog park when the original plan was approved to have some sort of housing there. And that also that with the wording of it, that they would be able not to come before the commission again to analyze what has happened over the past 3 years if this is approved.
Mr. Chairman. Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry. Yes, go ahead.
I appreciate Commissioner Pearson's comments, and this is not the greatest use of land, but you can't force somebody to build housing on the property, and they can turn around next week, next month, and start construction of a house or sell it to somebody who will build on it. I'm going to be favorable to it. I believe, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, I think at the end of the 3-year period, they do have to come back to the Planning Commission to extend the use of it as a dog park. Am I reading that correctly?
Commissioner Cow, the way it's recommended is if they want to continue the use, they would amend the PUD master plan, but the planning and development director would have the authority to approve the amendment as long as they were in substantial compliance with the conditions of the master plan.
Okay, is that standard? Is that the SOP for amendments to the PUD?
So the zoning code spells out the conditions under which a major amendment is required. And usually a major amendment is required when there's a substantial change of use.
No, I understand that, but is there anything that would prevent the Planning Commission to change the condition that's recommended by staff to provide that at the end of 3 years, in order to extend the 3-year term, in order to extend the term for the dog park beyond 3 years, they have to come and get approval from the Planning Commission?
The Planning Commission tonight could include in their motion that a major amendment is required at the end of 3 years. So you could require that tonight. You could recommend that be a requirement tonight. I mean, your recommendation goes to the governing body, of course, and they have to act on it. But you don't have to follow staff's recommendation. Our reason for recommending that is partly because we can't compel them to build something, and partly because we have had no complaints that I'm aware of the dog park, and it's relatively, I'd say it's benign based on our experience with it.
I appreciate that, Mike, but things do change over time, and out of respect for the comments that have been made tonight, I would going to offer a motion to approve per the staff recommendation with the change that it be considered a major amendment to extend it beyond the 3-year term and have it come before the Planning Commission and city governing body.
Okay.
Are there any other discussion items before we move on to the motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm just I'm confused why it would need to come back to us. I mean, we'd be 6 years post having a dog park there until they're ready to build on it. I don't know why staff at the planning department couldn't make that decision. But maybe I'm just not seeing it, so.
I can address that concern, Commissioner Messina, since I'm the one who brought it up. I live not too far from there. And even though I wasn't included in that 300-foot radius, it has always concerned me that there's a dog park instead of housing available. So I would like them at least to be held accountable to continue to have a dog park. That I personally have never seen used. So, but granted, I am not there 24 hours a day. So I think that little bit of accountability, and if it's going to stay a dog park, then we need to change it so it can just be that.
Okay, I remember 3 years ago, the residents that did come on the call, their major concerns, I don't think it was very many who attended the planning commission call. Their concerns were just more on the maintenance of it and it not getting, that it gets mowed and taken care of. And I know they've been doing that at least every time I drive by, but you do bring up a valid concern. So I'm open to whatever. I just want to make sure that we do it, within appropriate guidelines.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion before we entertain a motion? If not, Commissioner Kopp, would you like to put your motion forward?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move approval of the amendment to the PUD, consistent with the staff recommendation, with the further provision that condition number 2, which is to general note number 8, be revised so that any extension of the allowance for the dog park beyond the 3-year term that would be approved under this amendment comes before the Planning Commission and the city governing body for approval.
Thank you, Commissioner Cope. Do we have any second?
I second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Chris, would you please take the vote?
Okay, Mr. Dean,
Aye.
Ms. Herron,
Aye.
Mr. Kanar,
Excuse me, aye.
Mr. Kelp,
Aye.
Ms. Messina,
Aye.
Ms. Pearson,
Aye.
and Mr. Tababin.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. On to the next action item, P21-26 Meadowlark Square Subdivision number 7. Start out with staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is a proposed subdivision on a 12-acre site, 39 new single-family residential lots at a density of a little more than 3 dwelling units per acre. As this map shows, the property is located outside city limits, outside the urban growth area, but inside the city's 3-mile extraterritorial jurisdiction. For those who aren't familiar with this, in accordance with Kansas state law, the city of Topeka has authority over subdivisions in this area that's outside city limits, but inside the 3-mile area. As you can see with the map on the right, this is in an area that's kind of developed at urban densities for the most part. The land to the north consists of duplexes and attached housing. The land to the south, to be to the southwest and to the west on the other side of US 75 residential development at an urban density. I might get into this a little bit more later, but a lot of this area was developed before the city adopted its current land use and growth management plan in 2015 that really discouraged that type of development. I hate to say the horse is out of the barn, but that's kind of how it is in this area. It got developed before that policy change. And a lot of that is because there is sewer and water infrastructure up here. Next slide, please. So the current zoning, or it's actually been, the rezoning has actually taken place, but prior to the recent zoning action by the county does have jurisdiction over zoning, and it was zoned C2 commercial. C2 commercial in the county is very similar, if not the same, as C2 commercial in the city. It allows retail land use, retail sales, that kind of thing. The county recently approved the rezoning from C2 commercial to PUD single family residential, and they did it by resolution, and the resolution refers to the preliminary plat as essentially the plan for development, essentially like the master plan. Next slide, please. This is the preliminary plat. As you can see, it's got some kind of interesting lot configuration. That ended up resulting in kind of some substandard setbacks, which can be approved by PUD. It also made it kind of more interesting the way the houses are going to be laid out. The way this is going to get developed is there are probably 3 or 4 different housing types. The developer might retain control over all the construction, and it could all look very similar. It doesn't necessarily have to, but that's generally what you can expect. So in terms of services, the water is provided by the Rural Water District, Rural Water District number 4. Wastewater, it's a Shawnee County Sewer District number 69. The Half Day Creek Sewer Interceptor runs through the property. An interceptor is a main line. When someone develops and they want to connect to sewer, they can't connect a service line directly to the interceptor. They have to do it by the extension of a main. So it's a main line that carries a lot of effluent long distances. Under the sewer arrangement, the city provides maintenance and treatment under a contract with the county. Street maintenance is by Soldier Township, and fire prevention and response is by Soldier Township Fire District. Next slide, please. This is the final plat. I'd say if there's any issue that really came up during the review of this, it was the design of the horseshoe style street pattern or street alignment. County policy requires that a curved corner have a minimum design speed and of 35 miles per hour. And this is more like 50 miles per hour as designed. And so we worked through that issue, and the condition of approval reflects the solution. Condition of approval number 1. And so what the developer is going to be required to do is change some of those lots. I believe it's lot 8 and lot 9. So they have a radius at the corners. And then they'll have a 50 mile per hour design speed. And they need to control access at the corners. And they'll need to add notes and graphics to the plat to require left turn signals and right turn signs with a 50 mile per hour advisory speed to just caution drivers. So drivers won't have to stop. They will just have to be aware that they have to drive slowly around those corners. Other conditions that they change the street names. Those are not I would say those are not substantial conditions. That's something they can easily accommodate. And with those conditions, staff is recommending that this be approved and go on to the governing body. The governing body's role in this, for those who don't know, is to accept the public land dedications. The Planning Commission's role is to approve the subdivision plat. There's a section in the report. I won't read it. I won't try to repeat it, but it explains why this is acceptable relative to the comprehensive plan, the land use and growth management plan. Again, the land use and growth management plan doesn't really support urban densities, but this is in an area that's kind of urbanized. There's sewer. Use of septic systems is not even really an option when you're this close to a sewer main or a sewer interceptor. And when you connect to sewer and you provide streets, rural densities aren't really feasible. And so this is where we're at on this, and we're recommending approval. Be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Do we have any questions for staff?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner McCall.
Thank you. Mike, I have a couple questions about this. I mean, this is part of that peculiar arrangement between the city and the county, zoning versus subdivision regulation. But in the first page of the subdivision report, under the heading of annexation, it says the subdivision is exempt from annexation since it is an existing urbanized area. You've covered that. And not increasing approved intensity. Could you explain to the commission what the basis for saying it's not increasing approved intensity? I mean, the county has rezoned it from C2 to this PUD with a really pretty high, a very high level of residential density per acre.
Yeah, I'll do my best to respond to that, Commissioner. Mr. Finder might have to help me out a bit, but currently the zoning is C2. So the size of that parcel is large enough to accommodate a neighborhood shopping center and associated retail. So if you look at rezoning it, downzoning it, if you will, to kind of an R1 density, R1 residential density, in that sense, it's a decrease in intensity. In some ways, it might not be a decrease in intensity, but certainly with probably, I'd say, vehicle trips, it's probably a reduction in intensity.
Well, let me ask this, Mike, and I don't know how critical it is that you make a finding that it would not increase intensity, but if the city's interest is sewer use and water use, 39 residences in there, I think would probably make a considerable demand upon water and sewer, comparable to whatever might be able to be constructed there under the county's C2 zoning. I'm not convinced that it's not increasing intensity if you build out an undeveloped C2 parcel and put in 3 residential units per acre as proposed on the plat. So, I mean, does the staff have a measuring stick for how you measure increasing intensity?
I think I'm going to ask Mr. Finder to help out on this question.
Sure, no problem. Mr. Hall, you said everything I would have said and kind of expanded on in terms of intensity. Mr. Kaup, I think if you look at our orientation book in terms of what zoning, what's the highest intensity zoning, what's the lowest intensity zoning, the high scale is industrial. And the low scale would be obviously open space or single family residential. So just in those terms, we do recognize when you come down that ladder. And the land use and growth management plan, the policies really try to recognize areas that are already developed, and if for densities that are not currently supported, if they were out there new on their own. And so this was one of the ways that we've tried to allow some exceptions to the
Bill,
general.
let me ask it this way, and your screen is freezing up a little bit, Bill, but let me ask this way. If the staff determination was that the proposed development under the PUD would actually increase the intensity, could you still go forward with a recommendation to approve, or is that a deal breaker? How significant is that intensity issue?
I think it's a fact. I think it's a factor. The fact that it's in an area that's urbanized with sewer probably is a bigger factor in our minds, because this is looked at more as something that was intended to be built out and planned to be built out. But we don't want to have I think the lower of intensity is a factor, but I wouldn't put it any greater than the infill factor.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Mike, let me ask you a second question, if I could, about the setbacks. I mean, it's a pretty significant decrease in setbacks from 30 foot to 7 foot, 7 foot to 5 feet on the side yard. Did I understand from your presentation that is something that the county has already approved?
They have essentially approved that. They are aware that it has substandard setbacks. I have had that conversation with not only the applicant, but with Randy Anderson, the director of Shawnee County Planning. Although it's the zoning in setbacks are not really so much an issue for the city in this case. It's just.
Well, it's our subdivision regulations that control, and how could we have setback requirements that are inherent to lot standards set out in subdivision regulations? How is it that our standards, or that they don't have to come to the BZA for a variance on the side yard, front yard, rear yard setbacks?
Commissioner Kaup, so
in other words, is the county's ability to do this just because it's a PUD, or do they have to establish lot standards in this area, notwithstanding what the city subdivision regulations call for?
Well, I have two points, two parts to my response. So the first of that is our subdivision code does not include setback standards. Our zoning code does. Our zoning code does not apply. It's the county zoning code. The applicant originally applied for R1, and just through the review process and an observation that I made, that I informed the applicant and the county about, was that the setbacks looked like they didn't meet the 7 foot minimum setback that I knew was required in the county. Again, that's not for the city to enforce so much, more for the county. So the county's way of dealing with that was not to say that it should be zoned M1, but that they would have reduced setbacks. They could have reduced setbacks through PUD zoning. So their way of resolving it was through the PUD process, and not through going through a board of zoning appeals as a BZA variance.
And if I may further clarify, that is exactly how we would use a PUD in a similar circumstance within the city. If we had needed setback flexibility within a development, the PUD is the tool to use to satisfy that, and not the BZA.
Okay. I just got two more questions, Mr. Chairman, if I could. I'll be quick here. Regarding streets, Mike, does condition 1 under the staff recommendation, and you explained some of this in the staff report about the block B at lots 8 and 9. Does that condition that the staff is recommending, does that bring the design compliance? Does that make it consistent with city standards? or consistent with the county's design criteria?
It's something that Commissioner, the county's design criteria really supersede or probably overrule the cities in this case, because these streets are not going to be the cities. They're going to be the counties, and they're going to be maintained by the township. So the responsible agency reviewing streets is the county, but it's in cooperation with the township. So just try to spare you some of the information here. I had conversations with county staff, with the township, and with city staff, and the city doesn't not have a lot of experience dealing with a horseshoe street alignment like this. The city was able to provide one example, and they handle it in this way. They had signage and those measures were in place. And so the county was interested in the city's response to that. So the county, I don't like to use the word variance because I don't think that's the right word, but the county, I believe, provided some relief to their design criteria. But those conditions, those came directly from the county.
Okay. I'd like to, but I won't ask you whether or not a design like this could pass muster if it was inside the city limits. But your answer is a segue to my last question, and that's about the governing body's responsibility or power to accept or decline to accept the rights of way and other public property associated with the subdivision. And you just said that the county, it's the county streets. So how does it work when the city governing body accepts the dedication of the right of way and then somehow it becomes county property? Is that how it's titled, or is there a conveyance? How does it work?
Commissioner, you're asking a question that I've asked myself. I'm not sure how that works. But I know that's what we've done in the past. It has gone to the governing body to accept street dedications, even if it's outside of city limits. Mr. Finder can probably answer that question. If not Mr. Finder, then Mary Feeney is waiting on the sidelines here too. So, well,
part of the worst case scenario is that this peculiar configuration of the street, as you talk about this horseshoe shape, if there's an accident at that location, and there becomes a debate as to whether or not this is a city street or a county street, in the event of some potential liability, I'm just puzzled by that. And obviously hope nothing like that happens. But it puzzles me. Whose property is it?
Ms. Feeney, would you like to weigh in?
Well, I thought of that issue myself when I looked at the statute. Which governing body has to accept the dedication? Obviously, the commission approves the plat, and the governing body plays no role in approving the plat. They just simply accept the dedication. But the issue is, which governing body? Is it the city or the county? And I would think it would be the county, just based upon that they have zoning authority, and I believe street maintenance is handled by the township. So I don't know. In the past, it's always gone to the city governing body to approve. Well,
yes, it has,
okay.
Mary. I think that's. There's there might be two different things here. One is who maintains the road. The other one is ultimately who accepts the street dedication and the utility easements, for that matter, which, to my understanding, would be could toggle back between the county and the city depending on whose utility that is. So I think the same thing would fall with streets. We really defer to the county in the technical review. And as you heard from Mr. Hall, there is some back and forth to make sure. And actually, I can speak to from experience that's exactly what happens. The public works staffs, they they don't want to get too far afield from one another either. They're engineers and their engineering standards, and so I think they help one another out. But when it comes to the ultimate, who's accepting the dedications, all we have to go by is who has authority, and at this point, the city is the only one with authority for subdivisions in that 3 mile area. Is that correct?
Well, that is true. Yes.
Yeah.
So the approval tonight, if there is approval by the Planning Commission and then by the City Council, we're signing off on the design of those streets. It's the city's design that, or the city is approving the design of the horseshoe.
Commissioner, yes.
Okay.
The city recognizes that, we recognize in our review that the governing body is going to, make the decision on accepting the dedications of the streets. So that's why it's important that our traffic engineer, our staff, had a role in reviewing this. I think the other thing to think about here is the alternative to this horseshoe design would be 2 cul-de-sac streets, dead-end cul-de-sac streets, which is not really desirable from a connectivity point of view. And actually the township, conversation I had with the township is they don't like cul-de-sacs because they don't like having to plow snow on a cul-de-sac if they can help it. So I think the alternative to the horseshoe design is the 2 cul-de-sacs, 2 dead-end cul-de-sacs, and possibly the project not even being feasible. And Kevin Holland is here tonight, and he can probably speak to that as well. Kevin's representing the owner.
The city doesn't require a traffic impact study under these circumstances. Is that correct? As part of the subdivision plat approval process?
Not for something like this. It has to reach a certain threshold, and I can't remember exactly what it is, but it kind of depends, but it has to reach a threshold.
So we defer to the county's judgment as to the taking the ingress and egress off of Button Road at that location, right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've talked more than I should have.
No problem. Are there
Mr.
any
Chair,
other?
I do have a question for Mr. Hall. So just in the event it does not get approved today or by City Council, what would be the next steps? Would they look at trying to redo the subdivision, or what would happen if it doesn't get approved?
I'd say if it doesn't get approved, it's not going to go forward. There's no reason to take it forward to the governing body. So at that point, it would be up to the developer to decide what they want to do. And their representative is here, and maybe that's a question for him.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair, I'm good right now.
I think I'm cutting out. Mr. Holland, are you here to speak on the project?
Yes, sir. Sorry, Mr. Chair. I couldn't tell you were cutting out, but Kevin Holland, Cook, Flat, and Strobel, representing the developer on this, and to answer the questions. This property has sat undeveloped for a long time, and it's traded hands to a lot of different individuals. Howard Paul owned it for a significant amount of time. That's when it was zoned, and I believe if I could help, or city staff can help me there too. I believe there's not a traffic impact analysis on this because it was a down zone. It was C2, which is extremely intense usage if they were to develop it in that. And we actually downzoned it to an R1 or a PUD with only R1 uses. So the only people using this horseshoe, as we're calling it, would be the residents within these homes, or trash, or someone specifically going into this. It's a unique subdivision. It's obviously it's hard to go after a specific target, but it's small yards aimed towards the older generation of homeowners, and so there's not a lot of yard maintenance. There's trails attached to the property to the north. We're going to put a trail out along the roadway as well, so that people can go out, walk around the neighborhood and stay within the neighborhood as well, all on Sidewalk. But if I can answer any questions, I'd love to do that. I think it's a unique subdivision with the layout, and our developer wants to bring that unique into Topeka, and hopefully it's very successful. I know that I was on with the earlier meeting as well, and I do believe the housing market's pretty hot here. So why that area is not being developed with housing is perplexing as well.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. Are there any questions for the applicant from the commissioners?
Mr. Chair, I have one question.
Yes.
From Mr. Holland. And I'm sure you've taken a look at this, but where the two streets tie into Button Road, sight distance out there, looks like it's fairly flat, a little bit of a crest vertical to the north, but this intersection sight distance look okay?
It does. Yes, sir. And
thank you.
It's one of those, it's fortunately a stop condition at both locations. And so they're turning left, most likely turning left into the development, whether it's which street you live on, but sight distance should be pretty good in there.
Good. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Culp.
Mr. Hollins, could I ask you, you mentioned sidewalks, and I'm looking at the plat. Is this a sidewalk that runs throughout the horseshoe? And if so, is it on the right side, left side, or both sides of the street?
Both sides, and then also a trail to the north. That there's an existing subdivision up to the north, and there's, if Mr. Hall could put the subdivision back up, maybe the preliminary, you'll be able to see the sidewalk tie back to the north and to the property lot. My eyes back in the day might have got that, but the third lot from the northwest to the east there's a sidewalk headed that way, and you'll be able to see that path that actually cuts through the northwest of the subdivision. And right. we're tying this, the sidewalk would be on both sides of the road, and then tying to that trail going to the west and to the north and to the east as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions from commissioners? If not, we can move on to public testimony for 4 minutes per person. Is there anybody in the public that wishes to speak on this issue? I don't know if I see anybody. If not, we'll close the public hearing portion and have discussion by commissioners. So anybody want to lead this off?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Messina?
My concern is just the overall concept that we are pulling more housing away from development inside our city limits. I know that we need more medium range housing, and you know, the small lot sizes attract a certain type of individual that wants to live there. But I feel like we're just cramming, from what I'm looking at, you know, the maximum amount of single family units we can on this property to, you know, in our county, when we're not having some of this in our city and developing our city, and it's just pulling people away. And we already have issues enough with vacant homes and needing to update them. So I personally have issues, like, for me to approve this, knowing where we stand. I know that we may be able to get around, the comprehensive plan, and that it does actually benefit us. And I know it's within our 3-mile area for approving subdivisions. I don't have a great feeling about it. And that's just kind of where I'm standing right now.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Call.
I agree with everything the commissioner just said. And we've been down this road before when we've had other projects, similar projects in this area. And I'm not sure we have the ability to disapprove the subdivision as submitted. I say that reluctantly. The city has chosen to make an arrangement whereby it is encouraging or accommodating the exodus of folks from the city limits, and I think that's very unfortunate and short-sighted, and it's been going on for many years. I think it is making it it's discouraging some developers from building housing within the city limits. It's easier to build out in the county, and this body and the governing body, the rules we have are not standing in the way of that. I wish we could have a discussion about that and whether there's some alternative to the present arrangement between the city and the county. But I don't like the development the way it has been going on north of Topeka. But I'm not sure what we can do with it about that under the present rules.
Mr. Chair, if I could weigh in here. Mr. Kaup is correct. The Planning Commission does not have the luxury of deciding where housing should be. Your job tonight is to decide whether the plat conforms to the subdivision regulations. If it does, then you must vote to approve it. You can't say no because you want more housing to be within the city's core.
I might speak to that actually a little bit. So I'm not in the city limits. This is my neighborhood, or about a mile away. So I'm a county guy. And so when I saw this, I was what I liked about it was more dense. So you have 39 lots that are, I'm on a 3-acre lot. A lot of people are up here. So it is a little more dense, and it's on an area that's been just a field for as long as I can remember, since they put in Hunter's Ridge. And I also like that it was smaller lots, and I'm guessing that being a smaller lot, smaller house, it would probably be a little bit lesser expensive house than some of the houses that are going on around here. So, I saw this kind of as a good thing in that regard, that it was more dense. And when you look at developing in the city, the city standards are kind of to try and keep things a little more dense. So for the county, in terms of the county, this is a pretty dense neighborhood. So I guess I saw it kind of the opposite way, as being a good thing, that because it's bringing, I guess another way to look at it is, my way of looking at it was bringing a more dense residential area to my neighborhood type thing. So it's kind of a little bit different way to look at it, different perspective. But so I thought it was, I was kind of pleased to see it something happening here. So that's anybody else, any other discussions from commissioners?
Just a quick point, Mr. Chair. In the discussion we were having on the design of the roadways, my background is traffic engineering, and I would agree with comments from Hall on the the alternative of two cul-de-sacs, I don't think is a good idea. I like the horseshoe design actually better. We are talking about a low speed and low traffic volume situation. And I think the traffic signing that they proposed is appropriate for location. So I think from that standpoint, I think the design of the street shouldn't be an issue for us.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there other discussions by commissioners? And if not, I would.
Mr. Chair, this is Bill. I just want to kind of follow up on Mary's point, if I can, real quickly, because I'm not sure everybody goes in and studies the subdivision regulations every month, and we certainly can bring back a discussion for the commissioners to do more informational. But the one key, in addition to meeting technical standards of the subdivision regulations, there is also a policy standard to be met, and that policy is that any subdivision must meet and be consistent with the comprehensive plan. In this case, land use and growth management plan. And I think in our case, in staff's case, that's always the hardest judgment to make. In this particular case, made even harder, but because seems like every property is different. But when it's in an area that is already been planned to be urbanized, and you look at it, that is one of the, if you will, exceptions that the comprehensive plan does allow for. If this development was say east of Button Road or further in an area that is rural and not currently developed in an urban manner, then absolutely. In fact, we've had to turn down proposals in the past that were right next to an interceptor for those same reasons. So the plan does protect against that sort of sprawling effect where there is some concentration directed to an existing urbanized neighborhood like this. So I just wanted to point out, you do have a policy standard to meet in the subdivision regs that's in the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fiander. Any other discussions or motions? I guess am I allowed to make a motion?
Yes.
Yep. Corey, this is Commissioner Kennard. I'll make it if you don't want to hear.
Okay, that'd be fine.
Yeah. Okay. Based on the findings and staff analysis, I would recommend that a finding that it is in conformance with the comprehensive plan subject to the conditions in the staff report.
I have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Twine. Chris, we have a motion and a second. Would you please take the vote?
Okay, we'll go from the bottom up. Mr. Tababin,
Aye.
Ms. Pearson, Ms. Pearson, Ms. Messina,
Abstain.
did you abstain?
Yes.
Mr. Kaup,
A very reluctant aye.
Mr. Kennard,
Aye.
Ms. Herron,
Aye.
and Mr. Dean.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 6-0 with one abstaining.
Is it at 5-1? I thought, wasn't there a nay?
Yeah, I said nay, Chris.
Okay, I'm sorry, I did not hear that. Okay.
Yep. 5-1-1.
So yes, 5-1 with one abstaining.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is communications to the commission. Mr. Fiander, do you have anything to communicate?
Mr. Chair, I don't. We did not have any zoning cases come to the governing body this month. The downtown zoning will be heard for action next week. So that's all I have.
Okay. Anything else?
I should remind you when I say downtown zoning, that's just the D1. We will be coming back to you if not next month, the following month for phase 2 of the downtown zoning. But that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And I believe that's all we had on our agenda tonight. So did I cut out again? We don't need to take a vote to adjourn. It's just a straight adjournment, right? So, yep, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.